Just a reminder to vote in this week's Locals poll, where you decide what deck I take to Locals every single week. Without any further ado, I hope you enjoyed the video. What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another deck profile. Today we are going to be doing our Frightfur deck profile for July 2023. So we'll do a quick cut to what the deck looks on paper, and then we'll get into the profile. Alright, so to start with the monsters, we're starting with 3 Fluffle Dog. So this is a searcher for a Fluffle or a Sabers when normal or special summoned. Definitely a 3 of there. Next, we're doing 2 Fluffle Penguin. When used for a fusion summon, it allows us to draw 2 and discard 1. 1 Fluffle Dolphin to recycle toy vendors and polymerizations. Triple Fluffle Bear, so that way we can get to toy vendor as quickly as possible. 1 Fluffle Owl to just search polymerization or also perform a fusion summon by paying 500 life points. 2 copies of Fluffle Wings just to get more advantage off of toy vendors. 1 Fluffle Octopus, so that way we can recycle resources from our graveyard or our banished pile. 1 Patchwork Fluffle for substituting for specific names. Since some of the Frightfur fusions require specifically named Edge Imp monsters, this one can actually count as that name. Next is to the Edge Imps, so I'm running double Sabers and double Chain. So I'm running 2 of each of these, because Sabers can always bring itself back, and then Chain, we can either add another one with its own effect, or we can use it to get to Sabers with something like Patchwork. So I felt like running 3 of either one of those would just be too bricky, so I went with 2. We are going to run 3 Edge Imp Scythe, though. So this one allows us to fusion summon during our opponent's turn, so we want to see this one as often as possible, so that way we can get Cruel Whale to disrupt their plays. I am also running 1 Edge Imp Saw for Frightfur Leo, and if I absolutely need to, I can normal summon it, discard a Fluffle, and draw 2. But it's mainly just for Leo. And that's going to be it for the monsters. So now we're going to go to the spells. So first I'm running 2 Polymerization. I'm running 2 because we can recycle it with things like Fluffle Dolphin. We can also substitute things with Frightfur Factory, Fluffle Owl's effect. So I am just going to run 2. I am also running 2 Fusion Deployment. So with this, we can reveal a Frightfur in our extra deck and special summon an Edge Imp from our deck whose name is listed on that monster. So we can use this to special summon Sabers, Chain, or Saw straight from our deck. Next, no Frightfur deck would be complete without 3 toy vendors. So this is kind of what makes the deck go round. Whether it be just graveyard setup, getting extra special summons, searches, you name it, this is the card in the deck. You always want to see toy vendor. And the next few cards I'm going to do as a group, because these are all the things you can search off of Edge Imp Chain. So we have Frightfur Reborn to reborn one of our fusions. 3 copies of Frightfur Fusion to just, fusion summon more out of the graveyard. 1 Frightfur Repair, so we can recycle a fusion monster from our graveyard and get one of its fusion materials back to the field. Frightfur Factory, as I mentioned earlier, allows us to fusion summon more. Triple Frightfur Patchwork, because, who wouldn't? It lets you get an Edge Imp and a Poly straight from your deck. Yes, please. Then I'm also running 1 Toy Parade. This is kind of I guess I'd call it a cheese card. And I absolutely love this card. Basically what it does is you target 1 Frightfur you control, it's the only monster that can attack this turn, but every time it destroys a monster by battle, it gets another attack in a row. So especially when paired with something like Bear or Daredevil, you can just get a lot of damage in one turn. And then we also are running one Frightfur March, just to protect from things like Imperm, Veiler, or when I went against the Bee Trooper player, Sting the Poison. Just so that way we can negate and destroy a targeting effect and also get a new fusion monster out for free. So that's going to actually be it for the main deck. 40 card main deck. And so yeah, now we'll go on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck, I'm running 2 Frightfur Sheep. It's kind of like Ancient Gear, where if it attacks, your opponent can't activate things. And when it gets destroyed, it revives itself with an 800 attack boost. So very nice there. I'm running 1 Frightfur Tiger, because usually we'll only need 1. Especially if we get it off of Frightfur Fusion, where we can have as many fusion materials as we want, basically, if it's later in the game. So this is one of those monsters that sometimes I want to save for later, just so I can go for a big blowout play. I'm also running 1 Wolf, just to facilitate OTKs, again, mainly with Frightfur Fusion. I'm also running 1 Frightfur Bear. This is one of my personal favorites of the deck, and it goes really good with Toy Parade. It can get up to massive amounts of attacks. And we have Frightfur Leo. This one, it's kind of like Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon, where it targets a monster and destroys it, but it also does burn damage. The only stipulation is it can't attack directly during that turn, but if you burn them for game, then what's it matter? Next, double Frightfur Kraken. So Kraken's really good. It gets 2 attacks per battle phase, and you can target a monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard, which is not a hard once per turn, by the way. So this is really good to use with our next fusion monster, which is our 2 copies of Frightfur Sabretooth. If you summon it with 3 materials, then it's immune to destruction from battle and card effects. It boosts all your Frightfurs by 400, and when it's summoned, you can special summon a Frightfur from your grave. So again, bring something back like, say, a Tiger or a Kraken is really, really good. Next, we are running 1 Frightfur Chimera. This is mainly just if there's something on their field that I don't want them to reborn, and I'm usually only going to summon this off of Frightfur March, because it does take 3 Frightfur monsters, so I don't want to banish 3 fusions unless I'm going for game, and I know I have it already. Next, 1 Frightfur Daredevil. This one, when it destroys opponent's monster by battle, inflicts 1,000 damage, and then when it gets destroyed, it inflicts 500 damage for each Frightfur in your graveyard. So I actually used the burn effect for a game one time when I took this deck to locals, and you can also pair this with Toy Parade for just massive amounts of burn damage if they have a bunch of monsters. Next is double Frightfur Cruel Whale. So this is best used with Edge Imp Scythe, where you can do this on your opponent's turn, and then destroy a card on both fields. It's really good if you can pop a toy vendor with this, so you can just get more searches. And then it can also boost any Frightfur on the field with half of its original attack. So it's good in that sense too. And ending it off for the extra deck, we have 1 Dangerous Frightfur Nightmare. So this is going to be one that I either get off of Frightfur March or Frightfur Fusion when I know I have game. So it boosts itself up quite a lot during your turn, but that's only during your turn, and it's a base 2,000. But what I ended up doing is I actually summoned this in the match against Bee Trooper off of Frightfur March, and I just summoned in defense position since it's 3,000 attack. So that was a nice little way to use it. But yeah, that's it for the deck profile. I've been trying to go a little faster on this one so these videos can be kind of shorter, because, you know, people's time is valuable. So now we're going to get to the test hands. We'll shuffle up and see what we get. Okay, let's see what we got. Starting off with Factory, Toy Parade, Toy Vendor, another Toy Vendor, and a Polymerization. Okay, so if we were going first, this is what we would be working with, but I like to go second if at all possible, so we're going to try going with a going second hand. So what we would draw for turn is Edge Imp Scythe. Not really what we want to see, is it? So this hand's actually looking kind of rough, not gonna lie, but there is a way we can really get this going. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna activate Toy Vendor. Okay, then we're gonna activate Toy Vendor, discarding Toy Vendor. We'll draw a card and reveal it. Frightfur Fusion, since it's not a Fluffle monster, it gets sent to the graveyard. However, since we discarded this Toy Vendor, it will activate, searching us either a Fluffle or an Edge Imp Sabers from our deck to our hand. So we'll get that. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a Fluffle Dog, because he's a good boy, both metaphorically and in terms of card effect. He's a good boy. All right, so then we're going to normal summon the Fluffle Dog, activate its effect to search for an Edge Imp or Fluffle, or Edge Imp Sabers or a Fluffle monster. So what we're going to do is we're going to search ourselves as Sabers. Voila. Now, depending on what our opponent has on their board, there's a couple different things we can do when we go to activate the Polymerization. There's a few different things we can get. So, we could get Frightfur Tiger to pop 2, Frightfur Wolf for 2 attacks. We could get Frightfur Kraken for non-destruction card removal. Or we could even get Daredevil. Or if we really, really wanted to, we could use the Scythe in our hand along with Fluffle Dog for Cruel Whale. Then we could pop the Toy Vendor, get another search, and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, that's basically all I'm really going to showcase for this test hand, because there's just so many options we can go into. Like there's just so many options depending on what our opponent has on their board. So I know that one's kind of short, so we'll do another one, but right now that's really all I got, because like I said, there's just too many options to go with one line of play. Okay, I shuffled back up and we'll see what we get for this test hand. So we're starting with Edge Imp Sabers. Ooh, Frightfur Patchwork. Frightfur March. Fusion Deployment. And Patchwork Fluffle. Okay. And again, typically with this deck, you want to go second to try to do a lot of damage, so we'll draw 6 card. Frightfur Repair. Okay, so what we would want to do first is we're actually going to activate Fusion Deployment first, so that way we could bait out something like an Ash. So what we would most likely do is we would reveal the Frightfur Sheep in our extra deck, so we can special summon Edge Imp Chain straight from the deck. Alright, and then assuming that there is no Ash, then we would summon the Chain in defense. Okay, so we got that. This goes to grave. And then what we would do from there is we go ahead and activate Frightfur Patchwork. Alright, to search for a Edge Imp and a Polymerization. So since we already have Sabers in our hand, we'll search for Scythe. And then if I can, there it is, Polymerization. Alright, so again. And, well, as I was starting to say, just kind of depending on what our opponent has on their board, we've got options. And that's one, and like that's, I know it might be infuriating for people that really want to see combos, but there's just, this deck always has just so many options. That's why it's so good. All right, that's literally why I went undefeated 3-0 at locals with this deck. Okay, so like, it's hard for me to commit to just one combo when there's so many options. Because like, even just off of this polymerization, right? Just off of Chain and this one Fluffle monster in our hand, we could go for Sheep. We could go for Kraken. We could go for Daredevil. If we use Scythe, we can go for Cruel Whale. Or if we wanted to use the Sabers instead of the Chain, we could go for Tiger, Wolf. We could normal summon Patchwork Fluffle, have it treated as Fluffle Bear to get Frightfur Bear. We could technically normal summon Patchwork Fluffle, have it be treated as Frightfur Leo. So yeah, just so many options. Don't know if I mentioned Daredevil or not, but we can do that too. But I will go ahead and say, like, let's just say our opponent has something really, really big that we can't destroy. So I guess, you know, just hypothetically, say we use Fluffle and Chain. Let's just say that we fusion summon Kraken in defense position. Alright. So what we would do is we would then activate the effect of Edge Imp Chain, since it was sent to the grave, to search a Frightfur card. Alright? And most of the time, you're going to be grabbing Frightfur Fusion with this, since we already activated Patchwork. Usually going to be going for Fusion when that's the case. Or if you do not have Patchwork already and have not activated it, search Patchwork. But it is a hard once per turn, so you can't activate multiple Patchworks in a turn. Alright, so then, again, just off of this, we still got options here. Because, like, we could go Frightfur Fusion for Daredevil, banishing these two from grave. Or we could even just sit on this and then use Edge Imp Scythe to summon Sabretooth during our opponent's turn with Frightfur March in the back row. So, I mean, yeah, there's just so many options that you can do with this deck, which is why it's so good. I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but that's just how it is. So I know these combos weren't, like these test hands and combos weren't as extensive as they have been with some of the other decks, but that's just because the deck is so flexible. Like, it can literally do anything you want. And that's why it's so good. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Like, subscribe, vote in the locals poll, because every time a deck gets taken to locals, I'm going to do a deck profile on it, usually the next day. And then I'm doing ones like this retroactively for decks I've already taken to locals. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.